Hey guys, Scott here. Today I want to talk about Ultra Great Swords, or Colossal Swords as they're called in this game, and why they, for some reason, are better spears than spears. I'm sure if you've ever gone against someone using this, hell, even in PvE, the quickest attack you have is that crouch poking attack. So this is not even solely a PvP argument because it's, bosses attack so fast sometimes you just only have time for a quick poke and then, go away. So for some reason, especially with the last patch, they've made great swords in this game, or colossal swords, better great spears than great spears. And great spears are things like the lance, and weapons of that class that are like spears, but they're much heavier and they do like more damage, have more poise damage, stuff like that. But colossal swords just do that better. Now, I think the problem is I don't mind colossal swords being good. In fact, I don't want them to be nerfed. This is the first game ever in Souls, well, not maybe ever, but first game in like a very long time where colossal swords are actually very, very strong. And that's great. So I don't want to see them just thrown away again. But I do think if you have a weapon that only has one initiating attack, it's just going to get obnoxious to a lot of people because it's not the player's fault for spamming the same attack over and over again. It's the dev's fault for not giving you any other options with the weapon. For example, like Ultra Great Swords in this game can have more like shockwave, so when you hit and barely miss, it stuns people around you, just like the other Souls games. That was always really nice. They can just simply be faster because the actual ratio from damage to speed still doesn't really add up. Like, big weapons in this game only do like, 100 more damage than like smaller, much faster weapons. So I think rather than buffing the damage of big weapons even more, we should just increase the speed of them more. So you can do something like that. Or you can do something like give all of the attacks that they do hyper armor, so they can't really be stunned. You can, there's just a lot more stuff. You can make them way less because it doesn't make sense that you have to have a much heavier weapon, but the heavier weapons are slower. And if you're wielding a slower weapon, you basically need poise. And to wear poise, you need a lot of armor, which means you need even more heavy armor, which means you need even more endurance, and the endurance for the fat weapons. You need so many stats for just like, it doesn't, like, I guess realistically you're holding a big hunk of iron, so it makes sense realistically, but balance wise it's kind of unfair to those classes that just need so much more endurance than everyone else, because you do kind of need poise if you're using a big slow weapon. So any of those changes, and there's a lot more suggestions that will be much better, I think, than making it so you just have this insanely fast crouch poke. And so I actually wanted to compare this to the Great Spear class, because people basically play Ultra Great Swords like a Great Spear class because they're doing nothing but the poke attack because it's so good. And Great Spears are also extremely heavy weapons that have big pokes that do big poise damage. So I figured they're the most similar things to compare. So that's what I wanted to do. So I went and I compared a lot of like frame data of all of the attacks that they have. And so the first thing I did was compare just the crouching R1, staggered crouching R1s from the Ultra Great Sword. And then I compared that to the R1 combo, the 3-hit combo for the Lance, because all the Great Spears have like the same combo moveset. So I just picked the Lance. And if we compare that, they pretty much have the exact same speed. The 3 hits come out at slightly different times, but they end up really having the ending be at the exact same time. So then I thought, okay, maybe it's because the 3-hit combo chain of Great Spears is just slower. So what if we just do staggered R1s? Staggered R1s are basically when you do an R1, pause a second, and then R1 again. So instead of going to the second and third hits in your combo, you go right back to the first again. So I tried that, and nope, it's pretty much the exact same speed again. So the Colossal Swords still come out, ahead there because they're attacking with the same speed, but they're doing vastly more damage, and they do more poise damage as well. You can't poise through an Ultra Great Sword poke. It's past the maximum amount of poise you can have in the game. Now, short of, gimmick things like the infinite poise tier, or you being in some, like, Marika's hammer weapon art that has, like, infinite hyper armor, this will stun you out of basically everything. However, you can poise through Great Spears. Great Spears, I believe, have 112 or 104 poise damage. The point is, you can, if you stack enough poise, you can poise through them. You can't do the same thing with Ultra Great Sword. So in terms of regular damage, they just do way more. And in terms of poise damage, they do way more. So then I thought, okay, well, I guess they're lighter weapons. So at least let's compare the stamina cost. So I compared the stamina cost as well. And nope, even with all of that information, Great Spear's regular standing R1 costs almost double the stamina of a crouch poke. And also, when you do a crouch poke, your stamina begins regenerating much earlier. So it ends up being, when you do 3 attacks, like, I'm not even a fourth of the way drained of my stamina bar on the Colossal Sword, and yet on my Great Spear, I'm almost out of stamina. So it's vastly less stamina to spam crouch pokes. You can crouch poke like 17 times in a row, and you can do that with like a great spear like 4 or 5 times in a row. So the stamina costs are completely out of whack. So now we have a colossal sword that functions as a spear that does more damage, more poise damage. It stuns for longer, and also it costs a fraction of the stamina. It's to the point like, well, why do great spears exist if I can just do this? And the thing is, I'm not even saying great spears are bad. They're actually pretty good. But I just want to see the colossal sword class have something else other than just the poke over and over again, because it's to the point where like, why would I just use anything else? And I don't think that's the sign of a good weapon. So any of those previous suggestions I said would probably be better than just only focusing on that attack. But I don't think great spears, or sorry, I don't think colossal swords should be better spears than great spears. It seems silly when you have this giant slab of iron and what you're doing is you're just doing a poke attack. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to go over the actual frame data of the two weapon classes and compare them. And obviously they do play a bit differently. Typically, lances and stuff are going to initiate differently. Instead of a crouch poke, they want to initiate with like like a jumping attack, and then you go from there. So they do behave a bit differently, but I'm just saying numerically, it doesn't really make any sense that colossal swords are better spears than spears, and I think that needs to be addressed. We don't need to nerf them. We just need to side grade them, buff everything else about it, but maybe make that attack not so ridiculous, or just make it parryable again. In every other Souls game, that attack was parryable, and for some reason, they've made it unparryable. So if you have someone Bloodhound stepping with that over and over again, it's just an absolute nightmare to go against, and I don't like that. So that's pretty much it. Again, I'm not saying we need to nerf it, just side grade it somewhere else so it's more of its own identity rather than just being a better spear. But that's it. Thank you for watching, guys. See ya.